Now I continue in 1 Timothy chapter 3, and we had made it down to verse number 2. Of course, it's in the light of this context that we find the Apostle Paul concerning the office of the deacon, saying in verse number 9, holding the mystery of the faith in a pure conscience. Holding the mystery of the faith in a pure conscience. And that is why we are in this context, because we are dealing with the matter of the mystery in this light. Paul states in verse number 1, this is a true saying, if a man desire the office of a bishop, he desireth a good work. I have dealt with that. And indeed, the highest office afforded the church in the New Testament is the office of the pastor. Here in this passage called a bishop. In other places also called the elder. It's my estimation that the elder and the bishop are truly the same man. The office of the New Testament elder and the office of the New Testament bishop is the same office. We call that the pastor today. Now, there's a number of qualifications that are pointed out concerning a man to be qualified to hold this position of a bishop or elder, or as we would call it, a pastor. I recognize that in our day, the only area of qualification that is held up as the second, not the first, the second qualification, the husband of one wife. And if a man is right on his marriage, quote unquote, he's married to one woman, then it really doesn't matter what other qualifications he may or may not hold, as long as he's only been married one time. Now, he's qualified to serve as a pastor in our church. Now, I think a congregation that looks only to that one qualification has shortchanged themselves concerning the matter of the bishop. I have observed a number of men through the course of my ministry that were right, quote unquote, on their marriage, married only one time, but they didn't meet any of the other qualifications. And I think there's a reason why this matter is actually brought up, and I'll try to touch on that some. The first of these is he must be blameless. A bishop then, number one, must be blameless. Now, there's a huge difference between a man that is blameless and a man that is perfect. Had the text said the bishop first must be perfect, we would have no pastors, because there are no perfect men. The nearest man to perfection that I ever knew was my late grandfather, Dr. Harold B. Seitler. And I knew the man. I knew the man. And he was one of the best men I have ever known. There is no doubt. He was a good man. But my grandfather was not a perfect man. And I esteem and respect my grandfather to this day. Recently I have received mail from a smart aleck coward that will not sign his name to his letters. And he said, your grandfather was not anything special, and I resent you talking about your grandfather, and on he went. And yet the coward won't sign his name or give me a return mailing address. You see, I'm subject to get in my car and drive to his house and see him. And that would probably frighten him out of his wits if I were to do that. And I'm subject to do that. So he won't tell me where he lives. And he won't tell me who he is. The man's a coward with a capital C. One of the reasons I make so many references to my grandfather is I was quite close to him. He was almost like a surrogate father to me, more so than a grandfather. I worked with him for 14 years on the staff at Tabernacle, and I sat under his ministry for 30 years of my life, and I had a great esteem for him. I esteemed him as a grandfather, but also esteemed him as a preacher and as a man of God and as a minister. And our relationship was such that there were times when we disagreed theologically on the area of interpretation. Now, I'm a Baptist, brother. I'm a Baptist with a capital B, and so is my grandfather. The disagreement was not over Baptist doctrine, but we did disagree on a few occasions dispensationally, and disagreed in the area of interpretation on occasion, but our relationship was such that our relationship was not hindered over an area of disagreement. I know men today, and you either are in 100% agreement with their interpretation, or they won't have any fellowship with you. Now that's making an assumption greater than my assumption of my own study of God's Word. Now I've read a King James Bible from Genesis to Revelation approaching 60 times. And I've never referred to myself as a Bible scholar. I'm not a Bible scholar today. My pastor and I were talking on the phone the other night, and I have great esteem for his pulpit ministry, and I appreciate it. That's why I'm a member of his church. I esteem his pulpit work, and I appreciate him. But he and I don't see eye to eye on every point of interpretation. And he gives me room for deference, and I give him room for deference, because neither one of us are scholars. Both of us are students. And you see, a scholar, if you attain the level of a scholar, then you have to be correct all the time. And I've changed my mind on a number of areas of interpretation where the King James Bible has hemmed me up and pinned me down. And I've discovered I can't take the Bible literally and believe what I was taught in systematic theology 30 years ago in that systematic theology class. If I believe that, then I can't take the book for what it says. But if you're a student of the Scriptures and not a scholar, you're a student, then you can have room to grow and room to move some and room to say, you know, I just didn't see that verse in the light of its context like I did in years gone by. The text does not say the bishop must be perfect. The text says the bishop must be blameless. Blameless. And I think the area of blamelessness is not to be interpreted as the area of perfection. I don't want a bunch of imperfect church members demanding perfection out of the pastor. If the pastor is required to be perfect, then he should pastor perfect people. And there are no perfect churches because there are no perfect congregations, and there aren't any perfect pastors to pastor perfect churches. The area of blameless, the pastor should be in such a condition as a man. I've never been a pastor, but I have been a businessman. I'm a businessman to this day. And I've been bivocational. I preach revival meetings and I run a business. And I try to conduct my business affairs in the real estate business in such a way. I wouldn't want a real estate instructor in the state of South Carolina to know more about the law of real estate. We operate in South Carolina under what is called the Practice Act. It was passed in 2017. Prior to that, our real estate was conducted under the old law, the old, I'm having a brain failure right now, the old common law. That's it. That's what I was looking for. The old common law. And we still have many areas of contract law and the law of agency that operates under common law, but that's been superseded by what is called the Practice Act. Now, I want to conduct real estate blamelessly. In other words, I want my real estate conduct, the way I conduct my the laws of agency and the law of contracts, the way I transact business. I wouldn't want a real estate instructor in South Carolina to know more about the Practice Act than I do, and I'm not a real estate instructor. I'm a practitioner of real estate. So I want to conduct my affairs blamelessly. I don't want to be audited by the LLR, which has control over licensing law and has control over real estate agents and agencies in South Carolina, the licensing and a regulating body. And I want to conduct myself in such a way that they could come and inspect my files and not fine me, not ding me for, well, this is improperly done, that was improperly done, and this is improperly done. I think that's the area of blameless. The preacher's affairs, business affairs, should be in such a way that he would be blameless. He could not be blackmailed, that his conduct, the way he pays his power bill, the way he pays his insurance, would be in order. A man that has a low credit score because he won't pay his bills, he borrows more than he can pay back, he lives above he spends more than he brings in, is not a blameless man. Secondly, the area, I better get off that touches on a lot of preachers. They say, now brother, my marriages are right, but when I start talking about paying their bills and keeping their financial house in order now preacher, you better get off that now. You're touching on too many people. All right, secondly, the husband of one wife. Now, there are instances when a pastor could, his wife could have died and he would be a widower, and he can marry a widow and continue right on with his pastoral work while having been married to two women. So how is he the husband of one wife when in actuality he has had two wives? His first wife died. Well, the Bible is clear that he is loosed from the law of his wife. When that wife dies, he's no longer married to her, and he's free to be married to another. Romans 7 verse number 4. So there are times when a man can have one wife and yet have been married, have exchanged marriage vows twice. Now, I'm not going to get into the area of divorce and remarriage and get into a long debate about whether a man that has been divorced through no fault of his own, 1 Corinthians chapter number 7, deserted by his wife, he's not under bondage under those circumstances if that man is free to marry again and continue pastoring. But I am going to bring this up, and my time is running out, and I'll bring this back up on Monday. Now, I'm not going to just say this and jump off the radio, and I'll have more to say about this on the program Monday. One of the reasons that Paul lays down this area of the husband of one wife is over the matter of the law of sowing and reaping. All people have some baggage. And all people, there's no perfect people. There aren't any perfect women. There aren't any perfect men. But there are some of us that don't have as much baggage as other people would have. And in this matter of divorce and remarriage, and I think that there are circumstances when believers are free to divorce and free to remarry and know they are not living in adultery. And I base that upon what I read in 1 Corinthians. I take those passages just as literally as I take John 3:16. But even in those circumstances, there is baggage, skeletons that are brought into from divorce, that are brought into a new marriage, that really the pastor should not be carrying those things. It would be quite an embarrassing thing for a former wife to show up in a congregational setting where her former husband is in the pulpit, while the current wife is also in the congregation. Now, I've got to go. My time is gone. I'll have more to say about this on the program coming on Monday.